Hello. Today I would like to talk about my meditation practice, and I would like to emphasize the part about the selflessness of a person. I've been noticing this, that there's not really like a person there. There's like form, feeling, perception, formation, consciousness, but not like a kind of discrete entity you could call like a self. There's no findable self, and you can go into it more so that you're in a deeper meditation, and you can do this throughout a day while you're doing stuff. And it's just a very weird thing to notice that there's no kind of discrete entity that you could call a self. So when you forget the self, it's like we say, all my ancient twisted karma from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, born through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. And it's like that. It's like realizing that you're very insignificant and maybe wrong about a lot, and it's like just realizing like I'm nothing. I'm like my spiritual teacher person would say, think of yourself as lower than dirt, and that's like the beginning of selflessness. And so sometimes I can navigate if I'm scared or angry. I can go towards my Buddhist practice and transmute the emotions, and it's a weird feeling because it's just a weird feeling because like you wonder why we're not all doing it all the time, and like why there are these like not mindful things that happen so often in human society, and you wonder why aren't all the people just kind of being more mindful. So it's like this weird feeling of it's like this feeling of like realizing that I'm like a sinful person, and then seeing it's like forgiving myself, and it's such a weird feeling. But there was a moment today during my work day. I was on break and I was just staring at the clock on my phone, and there were people around, and I was in a meditative state but not meditating on purpose. It was just the meditation was just taking place, and that's when you know you're really meditating, is when you're just resting in a yogic orientation, and that yogic orientation is such that the meditation takes place on its own rather than like an active trying to meditate. It's just like the meditation is simply the case of what's taking place. So then I kept having moments throughout the day. I was realizing that I didn't want to drink alcohol today because of the meditative realizations. I realized I don't want to touch alcohol, and it's weird observing the selfless nature of this body mind, because it appears to be a person called Jeremiah, but in reality it's like a river of chi, and people are just rivers of chi, I guess. And you can open into the Tao endlessly, and if you talk about you say Zen meditation or Reiki meditation, people kind of have a sense of what you're talking about. Or you say non-dual Advaita meditation, people kind of have a sense of what you're talking about, even though what it really is like nebulous, nothingness, emptiness. Can't really be pinned down as being even calling it Zen or anything. It's always more and other, and you just see kind of you see that choices are not something we have to make, and then also we should not make choices, but then furthermore, it's impossible for a human being to make a choice, because from the perspective of fate or destiny, everything has already occurred, and you can kind of you can orient towards this truth more so or less so. And so when we orient more towards kind of the idea that I guess that time is non-linear, and it's hard to put into words, and that's what everybody's trying to do through their different artistic mediums, and everyone's trying to just express this truth about destiny or fate or whatever. And then, you know, people get mad if you talk about it sometimes, or you have to talk about it a certain way for them not to get mad. But there's basically kind of no reason for a lot of the conflict that humans have. And also in my own life, there's not a lot of justification for a lot of the conflicts that I've had in my life or that I might have in the future, because if I can just do these little tricks of being mindful in certain ways, I can definitely avoid the kinds of conflict that might be problematic. And it's not difficult, but also in a certain way, once you meditate in a certain state, in a certain stage of once you get to a certain stage of development in meditation, you never can forget. I think it's impossible to forget kind of the truth of it and to return to it. And I think also you behave differently when you drink alcohol. Like the way that you get intoxicated without a meditation practice is different than how you get intoxicated with a meditation practice. There's like, because the mindfulness is still present in a certain way. But I'm just trying to think. My friend just got her Soto Zen priest ordination. She's been helping me and meditating with me and teaching me about Zen. And so I have a Zen priest helping me. That's really good, I guess. And then I stopped doing the Jung Sando because I think it's maybe got to a point where I didn't think it was what I wanted anymore. And the Zen is much more appropriate at this time. So it's just that, like, if you meditate for, it sounds stupid, but if you just like pray or meditate for 5 minutes, like in the morning or the night, just that makes a huge difference. Like just putting a positive intention into the air. I mean, if you can like just have, it's like brushing your teeth or something. It's like just something simple. And so I think I create all of the problems for myself, so I can, if I just choose to be mindful, I can avoid so many if I just choose to be mindful, I can avoid so many difficulties throughout my day, and other people don't even have to know that I'm doing mindfulness practices, but I'll interact with people, but I'm doing the mindfulness practices for myself and for everybody, but not sure what I'm trying to say exactly. It's just that you notice things differently when you've meditated a lot. And then it's like you wonder about, if your meditation is so strong, can you transcend like greater and greater adversity? And then you wonder about, like, I don't know, like Zen teachers are notorious for, like, you know, doing difficult things for their students to grow. I guess it's what I'm talking about is meditation, but also I guess it's psychotherapy, which I don't know a lot about, but I'm very interested in psychotherapy and how it relates to meditation. And like I'm talking about basically like programming my body and my mind through like positive intentions, and just like putting like a prayer into the air and seeing how much like a simple intention can change, but you realize that there's consciousness and then there's a lack of consciousness, and it's always everyone's responsibility to be as conscious as possible. and there's possibilities of falling into a lack of consciousness. And I think when you get to a certain stage in meditation practice, eventually you become, they say, like someone who doesn't slide back. Like eventually you'll always remember the secret mantra, and then you'll have the Vajrayana realization of the Dharmakaya, and then I mean it's like at a certain point you can't slide back, I think, and it's like you can't forget it once you've seen it. And eventually, like I've been trying to kind of like avoid it, like through alcohol and things like that, but like it's impossible to forget. And like it is like a thing that someone might want to avoid or be scared of, because I mean what I'm talking about is like, you know, the meditative states or nirvana or whatever you want to call it. And there's a real aversion to that blissful happiness, because no one really wants all their problems solved. And so, I mean, it's like the bliss of nirvana is like available to anybody. They just have to open to it. And there's I don't know, not a lot of people doing that. And you'd think that it would be that the Dharmakaya, or whatever you want to call it, would be everyone's primary interest. It's really something where I do have an aversion to meditation and to the blissful states of Vajrayana meditation. And I have this aversion because, like I said, no one wants all their problems solved, because that's something where you're okay with adversity, and you're forgiving yourself and forgiving everyone else. And I mean, you'd think I would at least meditate for 40 minutes every day. But the realization is like, I see that I'm like a horrible sinner. That's like what my realization is. And it's like you want to apologize for your sinfulness. And but then you realize there was no person there to begin with, and that it's just I guess that it's just energy. It's just like chi, patterns of chi. And I mean, if you get to the point where you can kind of recognize the non-dual aspect of like a thought about a person or something along those lines, like an idea or basically where you can take thoughts and view them in a certain way. I mean, if you do a Zazen meditation period, that's 40 minutes in a certain posture, sitting on a cushion with your eyes open, and it's like you pretty much have no way of missing it if you do that. That's like an obvious heavy-handed, you know, method where it's like you're not going to miss it if you sit for 40 minutes with your eyes open, with your hands in a certain position, with another person doing the same thing. It's like you can't not notice the nature of the state of affairs, which is essentially that we can be more mindful than we think we can by, well, not being attached, I guess, to certain things and not having as many opinions. Essentially, it's like dissolving opinions and choices so that you're left with a selfless field of chi energy. And it's no longer Jeremiah, but it's just bodhicitta. And it's like there's no reason why you can't go into it more kind of throughout whatever kind of lifestyle, whatever you do during the day. It's like there's no reason why we can't be more and more mindful, but I think that it's not necessarily sanctioned or encouraged by society in a lot of situations, but it's still something which I think takes place on its own. Even if we don't try to be mindful, the mindfulness will take place. If we're aware of it, it'll have to take place. I mean, you get to certain points and you have to take a certain yogic sort of stance. And so if we can recognize or notice the strange state of things, which is kind of indeterminacy or selflessness, then we can navigate more efficiently, and we can know the truth of what really is going on in our field of awareness, in our life, in our body, in our mind. And we can understand that I'm not Jeremiah, I'm not a person, I'm I'm a pattern of chi energy. And so it's not about rejecting or accepting, because neither one is possible. It's simply it's just isness, just you realize, all of these worldly pursuits are not spiritual. They're essentially a waste of time, because when we pass away, we'll be left only with our Dharma practice. So why not practice Dharma exhaustively now? Because that's essentially everything that's not Dharma practice is illusory, essentially, because we're going to be left only with the understanding of the noticing, the recognition that we have been able to find. So it's funny how we have this aversion towards practicing Buddhist meditation. We have this aversion towards practicing Buddhist meditation for some reason. It's like very funny in a weird way, but it's the Lotus Sutra says that there's this incredibly serious truth that's very urgent, extremely urgent, and no one is paying any attention to it. They're not aware of it. They're just going about their business, la-di-da-di-da, without understanding this incredibly urgent truth that the Lotus Sutra talks about, which is the truth of the Dharma. And people just ignore salvation, and I guess when you have a thought, there's a way to freeze and dissolve the thought, and I notice when I'm meditating, I think of words. Like I say, now this is the Dharmakaya, now this is Zazen, things like that. And, you get to a point, my teacher, when I was doing Jung Sendo, she would encourage really extreme kinds of, like meditation flexes, kind of. She would say, like, my other teacher, Sean, I don't want to say his name, he encouraged me to chant the mantra basically 24/7. He would see like many hours per day of chanting the mantra. And you can do that with Zen. You can do, Zazen for many hours per day. And I honestly was someone who meditated so much, so often years ago. And then I think I developed an aversion to kind of like the bliss of nirvana. And even though nirvana is good, I didn't go towards it. And when you realize the truth of Zen, you realize that basically that you're nothing is missing, and that you're complete and you're whole, and that there's nothing that could improve your situation, because your situation is already amazingly wonderful. And it's like you reach the finish line, and then you realize there was no finish line, and you realize basically all of the things that aren't nirvana are like illusions, and then you realize nirvana is also an illusion. And it's like you can train in meditation in the way that a person trains on a bicycle or a tricycle, and so when you realize how incredibly important it is, you realize, human values are at stake, which are extremely important, or the most important human values, and that people won't understand if you try to explain it, so you just have to do it. And, a sitting meditation period can be the difference between like an upset workday and a functional workday. And you realize that you have to make sacrifices, and you realize that there's spiritual aloneness, which is like the main thing that Jiddu Krishnamurti talks about. And the spiritual aloneness is essentially the main thing where there's a chasm between me and everyone, and I will never be able to bridge the chasm, and I have to love everyone without people being able to connect on certain levels, and I just have to love the universe and love myself and love everyone, and realize that sometimes people will be separated by that chasm, and that is okay, and that's simply how it is. And when you have a value, an integral value, people don't understand what that means. It's something which is, it's like in Star Trek, where they have the Prime Directive, where they can't interact with species that don't have warp drive yet. It's like an integral value is something which is so profoundly important. Like what Zazen is, what I found in Zazen is something which is like, if you try to say that to someone, it's like they're not going to know what you're talking about. And that's what I mean about spiritual aloneness, but the value is still true. So I still have Zazen, but no one's going to know what I'm talking about. So I just have to practice Zazen.